Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Dale Anthony Pivarunas, and we're going to be discussing his amazing book, Christian Economics: The Integration of Capitalism, Socialism, and Laborism. Now, it's available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com, but people, if you want to gather everything that Dale has in store, well, do yourself a favor and head directly to his personal site, and that's christian-economics.com. There you'll find more information on Dale himself, more information on this wonderful book, as well as find the hyperlink set up to take you to the purchasing pages. So one more time, that's christian-economics.com. And I do want to take this opportunity and point out that Dale was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best publishers in the business, Citi of Books. Now, people, if you are a writer out there, or you know someone that is writing a book, and they need help moving it, well, do yourself a favor and contact the folks over at Citi of Books. They're one of the best in the business to do it. They specialize in taking your literary creation to the next level. Find out more information on them through cityofbooks.com today and see how they can help you. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Dale here on the line. Now, I'm going to let you all know right off the bat, this is an educational narrative, but it goes deep, okay? When we talk about his book, Christian Economics, there are layers to this, people. There's so much more that meets the eye. And we're going to scratch the surface during today's interview, but you're going to have to head on over and purchase your copies, okay? Because there's so much to discuss. There's so much to really get involved in, and it's impossible to cover it in the short interview that we're getting ready to discuss. But one of the questions that kept coming up for me as I was preparing for today's interview and I was doing research on his book is, how does God and Christian values fit into the capitalistic society that we currently live in? And listen, the simple answer to that is it doesn't, or at least it doesn't in the way that it is constructed currently. It hasn't been. And Dale's going to go into a lot more detail, but from a Christian perspective, capitalism that is left unchecked is out of control. Oh my goodness, I'm telling you people, there is a lot to uncover here. This rabbit hole goes deep. I'm here for it. I'm looking forward to this discussion, and I'm telling you, you're going to run to his Amazon, Barnes & Noble pages in his personal website, christian-economics.com, and purchase your copies because there's just too much to discuss. We're not going to be able to get into it all. Dale is the expert. He's done the research. He's going to be able to articulate his perspective much better than I ever could. So without further ado, let's bring him here with us. Dale, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest with us today. How are you?
Thanks. Fine, thank you.
You know, Dale, I'm really looking forward to this discussion because I think you're hitting on something that, listen, whether people acknowledge it and choose not to discuss it, or it's just something that a lot of people are blind to, I think it's a discussion that needs to be had. So it is an honor to have you here to discuss it. And I know we have a lot of information to discuss pertaining to the book, but I want to hold off slightly before jumping into it. And I want to learn a little bit more about your background. Tell our listening audience a little bit more about yourself.
I'm originally from Chicago and spent basically my entire life in Chicago, but relocated to Toledo, Ohio 2 years ago for work. I've taught in high schools and universities. I was a consultant for 13 years, and now I work within the automotive industry.
You know, Dale, I wasn't planning on initially going here, but after that opening, I don't know how I can go anywhere else. So you have a background in education, now working in the automotive industry. Where does writing fit into all of this?
Well, starting 20 years ago, I slowly came to the realization of the gross injustice caused by what I term out-of-control capitalism and the inhuman impact on the majority of the world's population. According to Oxfam International, the world's richest 1% own twice as much as the bottom 90% the world's population, which is not, equates
Wow.
to 7.2 billion people. So my sympathy and compassion for all of these people, the men, the women, and children, inspired and drove me to write this book over a span of about 10 years. While working full-time and raising 3 daughters as a single parent, I felt I really had to do something. I initially thought about volunteering to help the poor, but I wanted to have the greatest possible impact, and that is why I chose to write a book.
Well, Dale, let's jump right into that book, Christian Economics, the integration of capitalism, socialism, and laborism. Tell us a little bit more about it.
65% of Americans identify themselves as Christian, but yet it takes very little reflection to realize that there's almost no influence of the basic principles of Christianity on business and economics. U.S. businesses and the U.S. economy are actually pagan. Unfortunately, the vast majority of Christians have closed their minds to the inconsistencies between their faith and the philosophies and practices of the business world, which falsely claim that business is outside the realm of morals. As expressed in the statement, it is neither right nor wrong, it is just business. My book addresses the application of Christian principles to business and economics, both in theory and in practice. From an economic system point of view, Christian economics integrates capitalism, socialism, and laborism, eliminating the excesses of each and proposing a system which seeks to maximize economic value and wealth for virtually all people. My book, Christian Economics, promotes justice, fairness, balance, cooperation, and mutual respect within business, economics, and politics, and based on really 3 principles. Good is to be done and promoted, and evil is to be avoided. Love your neighbor as yourself, and the absolute dignity of each and every human being. So the question that I think everyone should ask are prices, jobs, business practices, the minimum wage, wages in general, the outsourcing of jobs, pensions in private industry, home foreclosures, home repossessions, employer-employee relationships, manager-subordinate relationships. Are these based on the principles that good is to be done and promoted, and evil is to be avoided? Love your neighbor as yourself, the absolute dignity and equality of each and every person, and the imperative of treating every person with dignity and respect. Extremely unfortunate that the vast majority of Christians have totally disconnected their economic lives from their religious lives and their religious beliefs. Most Christians exclaim their belief, loyalty, and love of God within church, but totally deny Him within their economic lives, really acting as though God does not exist. How is the Christian mandate to love your neighbor as yourself to be applied in business, economics, and politics? I'll just go back to sort of a reference from the Bible. So, and when the Son of Man shall come in His majesty and all the angels with Him, then shall He sit upon the seat of His majesty, and all nations shall be gathered together before Him. And He shall separate them one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. Christians have heard this passage from the Bible many times, and yet so few Christians understand its true meaning, and even less apply this passage to their economic, business, and political lives. Who are the hungry, the thirsty, the naked, the strangers, the sick, and the imprisoned in modern society? Obviously, it's the homeless, the unemployed, those living in poverty, those who are unemployed, those who had their homes repossessed, those who are physically, mentally, and emotionally sick, and all those imprisoned physically, financially, and emotionally. Jesus identifies with these people, and Christians are to see Jesus in these people. But do Christians really see Jesus in the homeless, the unemployed, those living in poverty, those who are unemployed, those earning minimum wage, those who have had their homes repossessed, those who are physically, mentally, and emotionally sick, and all those in prison physically, financially, and emotionally? The vast majority do not. What is worse is that many people who call them, What is worse is that many people who call themselves Christian actually deride these people. 65% of Americans identify themselves as Christians, so it would be logical to see a significant influence of Christianity within the U.S. economy and political system, and yet that is certainly not the case. which is with such a high percentage of Christians within the United States. There is obviously a very high percentage of so-called Christians within banking, the defense and weapons industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the chemical industry, the diversified manufacturing industry, and within government, all levels and all branches. And yet the Christians in these industries and within government make no effort to apply Christian principles within their job. How could a Christian working within the banking industry support the foreclosure of over 15 million homes and the repossession of over 5 million homes? How could a Christian person working for the banking industry personally apply and enforce policies that took people's homes away, knowing that this affected women, children, and senior citizens? How could a Christian sheriff or police officer forcefully evict a family from their home, removing their belongings and placing the family's belongings on the street while the family watched? How could a Christian help the corporation that they work for to outsource jobs to another country, knowing that it results in the loss of employment for hundreds or thousands of employees and their families just to increase profits? How can a Christian work for a company that manufactures military weapons that helps promote military conflicts so the company can sell its products and services? How can a Christian work for an employer who either directly or indirectly operates factories that employ young girls and even children, paying them extremely low wages or making them work excessively long hours? How can a Christian employer pay adults with families at the minimum wage rate or less than the minimum wage? How can a Christian manager force employees to work without a break for 10 or 12 hours at a time? How can a Christian manager lay off workers a day before a holiday so that the workers are not paid for the holiday? How can a Christian work for a company that intentionally reduces the hours of its employees so that it does not have to provide health insurance? How can a Christian work for a payday loan company or a title loan company which has interest rates between 300 and 750% or higher? How can a Christian work for a company that pays male workers much higher than it pays female workers for the exact same work? How can a Christian work for a hospital or medical center which charges a person without insurance more than a person who has insurance because the insurance company gets a discount? The person that does not have insurance because they cannot afford insurance. How can a Christian work for a company that discriminates against older applicants? How can a Christian in government ignore the 9 million people who are unemployed, the 30 million people who are underemployed, the millions of people who have to work 2 jobs, the 90 million people who live on paycheck to paycheck, and the 46 million people living in poverty?
You know, Dale, listen, I'm picking up what you're putting down, okay? And so many of these concepts are held amongst so many people, right? These questions that you're asking, this makes perfect sense because there is something wrong with society, right? With the structure that is currently around society now. Now, here's the follow-up question to this. Your subtitle is The Integration of Capitalism, Socialism, and Laborism. Now, ideally, I recognize that and I love the idea. But I want to ask you, Dale, are you advocating truly for the integration of all 3 of those ideologies? And do you really believe that they can coexist?
Yes, absolutely. So the main problem with the U.S. economy is a lack of checks and balances. And that is why the U.S. economic system and U.S. political systems is controlled by out-of-control capitalism. You know, whereas the 3 branches of the U.S. federal government act as checks and balances on each other, currently there are no checks and balances on capitalism, but there should be. Socialism and laborism can and should be checks on capitalism. The U.S. currently has experienced significant inflation impacting the majority of Americans. And why? Because companies can raise prices and there is nothing to stop them. The Federal Reserve's actions will not stop inflation or lower prices. They never have. The only way to stop inflation, lower prices, and control prices is by competition, and not competition from other capitalistic organizations. Capitalist organizations do not really compete since they have similar goals and objectives, the maximization of profits and assets. Socialism and laborism are the only real competitors to capitalism. While the U.S. has socialized services, it has no socialized production system. But imagine 40% of the manufacturing and transportation industries being owned, controlled, and managed by the government, primarily state government supported by the federal government. For example, imagine a capitalist-owned gasoline station selling regular grade gas for $3.50 a gallon. And across the street, there's a state-owned gas station selling a similar grade of gas for $3 a gallon because it limits its profits and the profits of its supply chain. What will happen? Of course, most people will get their gas from the state-owned station. And what will the capitalist-owned station do? Obviously, they will lower the price to compete. And if the state-owned station pays their associates a living wage, while the capitalist-owned station pays the minimum wage, the exit of workers from the capitalist-owned station to the state-owned station will force the capitalist-owned station to pay their workers more and perhaps even a living wage. Secondly, imagine the definition of a capitalist corporation to be redefined as a joint ownership of capital shareholders and labor shareholders. And the board of directors must consist of an equal number of capital shareholders and labor shareholders. What would happen if the capital shareholders want to close a plant and outsource the operation to a plant in China or Vietnam or India? The labor shareholders, realizing that they will lose their jobs, will obviously oppose such an outsourcing decision. So can capitalism, socialism, and laborism coexist and be balances on each other? I absolutely think that they can and they must.
Yeah. Listen, I'm right there with you, Dale. As I mentioned, this is something that I think needs to happen, and this discussion needs to start. Now, listen, as we start to transition here, because I do want to give you an opportunity, who would you say is your intended audience with this book, Dale? And I know we've already started to cover it, but I think the message is so important that it's worth repeating and doubling down on. So two-part question here. First and foremost, who is your intended audience? And secondly, what is the main message that you hope that they receive from your book?
I've written this book for the unemployed, the underemployed, those making minimum wage, those living in poverty, those who are having or have had their homes repossessed, those who are slaves to payday loans or title loans, students who have invested in a college education and have not found work that corresponds to their skills, women who do the same work as men but get paid less, those living from paycheck to paycheck, those who cannot afford to get medical care, and the tens of millions of people who have lost hope of ever achieving the American dream, which is really pretty much a significant percentage of Americans. And the message that I really want readers to take from this book is it's my sincere hope and prayer that someday Christians will act like Christians in their business, economic, and political lives, and that through their actions help to eliminate the economic and political injustices prevalent in the United States and throughout the world. May Christians be inspired by this book to truly be that light to the world and help society to put people before profits.
People, listen, I told you at the very beginning of the interview, this book is so much larger than the title. The words on the page are an education, yes, but this is a lifestyle change, right? This is so much larger than a literary creation. This is a movement because there's only so much that people can take. At what point are we going to are we just going to wake up and realize that this is not the way life should be lived? And it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when what is going to be the straw that tips the scale, right? There's so much here. At the end of the day, this is not all, okay? I love it. I could sit here, I could talk to Dale for hours, okay? Because the revolutionary in me is like, yes, man, I'm here for it. Let's talk about it. Let's start the discussions. But I have to remind myself, Benji, this is not about you. In addition to this fantastic narrative, Dale has another book that's still in creation. Okay, it's completed now, but it is in the final stages of publication. Now, that book is called The Absolute Failure of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. Now, again, the revolutionary in me is, just from that title, my mind is going crazy, all right? It's going wild because you all know, I've mentioned this on a number of occasions, I've always been someone that has considered myself more spiritual than religious. And the reason why is I have something against organized religion and the way organized religion has been utilized through the centuries to manipulate and control communities and individuals. Now, again, it's another one of those moments where this is not about me. But you're going to want to be on the lookout for that, okay? We don't have time to go into it today, but you know what you have to do. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Christian-economics.com are the places you have to go. Pick up Christian Economics, the integration of capitalism, socialism, and laborism today, but check back in frequently because the absolute failure of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism is going to be a nonstop page turner, just like Christian economics. The discussion runs deep, people. These are conversations that need to be had because once we start to have the conversation, we can raise our awareness. It starts with these books. These are wonderful resources to add to your shelf. They're better gifts to add to someone else's. Dale Anthony Pivarunas is the author you have to thank for bringing it to your table and the author you have to thank for starting these discussions. It's within our reach, and we need to start to dismantle this. Dale, this has been a fantastic interview, and I know there's so much more to discuss. We are on the precipice of something big here, and I want to thank you for bringing it to our attention, and thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thanks, Benji.